Hello, everyone, and welcome to Press Coverage, brought to you, of course, as always, on the Going for Two Live network. It can be found on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. You can see the videos on Twitter, but we can't interact with you. But on all other platforms, come on over and join the live chat if you'd like. And here to chat it up with me today is Christian Williams from the Devy Royale. Christian, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, man. Thank you for having me on. Happy Memorial Day to you.
Thank you. You as well.
Thanks, man.
But yes, so as mentioned, we're gonna be talking about a lot of things. But of course, if any listeners, viewers want to ask any questions, feel free to go ahead. Just gonna do a couple of quick plugs at the start, though, because all this is brought to you by goingfor2.com. Jeff Lambert at Jeff Lambert77 on Twitter. He does so many great things, and I know the Devy Royale was actually part of the Going for Two Live network. So goingfor2.com, all that Going for Two stuff. That's in the Devy Royale fabric too, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But going all the way back, Christian, to the start of it all, the start of the sports fabric. When did you first get into sports, and what are your first sports memories?
Man, I've been into sports since I was born. I always like to tell people. I don't tell too many people this, but my first word as a child was ball. I grew up around. It was a big baseball family, but big sports family. So yeah, my first word, I think I watched so many baseball games as a toddler that I ended up, or as a baby, and that was my first word. So, but I remember, I was always going to Guardians games with my grandparents as a kid. And then one of my first memories was the Browns versus Steelers playoff game back in the day. I think it was a wild card game. That was like my first football memory and kind of why I started to like football as a kid. And then a fun one, I used to play basketball with my grandpa when I was really little, and he would put like a laundry basket behind him on the couch, and I would try to shoot over him. It was a good time, but those are my favorite memories for sure. But always been into sports, and I've played a ton of sports growing up and stuff. So it's been, my relationship with sports is ever evolving, but it's been a long time. So.
And I noticed, like, playing wise, continuing. I thought I saw a recent 3-point shot in a basketball game recently that was on Twitter.
Yeah. I play basketball. I've kind of become addicted to basketball once again, and I think I counted it up over 5 hours last week. And I used to just I'll lift and then I'll play basketball when there's some kids in there, but I've been just heavily involved now. The kids call me Alex Caruso because of my bald head. So I told him I want you to call me Luca eventually. So
we can always dream, right? And that's the fantasy. Yeah. But
right.
I guess real sports, awesome, fun. Fantasy sports, though, we've discovered is quite fun too. But when did you first make that discovery?
So it was somewhere around high school. I think it was like my sophomore year. I started actually playing fantasy baseball. In like those free leagues that Yahoo had back in the day. And I realized that fantasy sports are fun. Fantasy baseball is not for me. As much as I love baseball, I just can't do it. I can't manage my lineups that way. But I got into fantasy football as I think junior in high school, and really never looked back. I can't remember. A lot of people ask, like, what was your first draft pick? And I have no idea how people remember that kind of stuff because I have no idea who was even playing back then. I just have a bad memory with those teams. And I wasn't very good at fantasy sports to start, especially baseball, but I wasn't very good at fantasy football either. So, but yeah, somewhere around high school.
It's funny how the common thread of these answers on these episodes is not always everyone's first foray football. It's baseball. Right. I know I'm Canadian, so the common thing there might be fantasy hockey, which is definitely the case with me. So it's funny how we all migrate towards this, what we view as the superior one in terms of fantasy football.
Right.
And then eventually, I mean, you must have gotten good enough. I know you're involved in the what's it called? The Contract Dynasty Fantasy Football League organized by James Vecchio at What Money 3000 on Twitter. And I know you got that invite last year, and it was very strange, like really complex, really interesting, really neat and cool rules. And it seems like you kind of pulled a lot of different people with a lot of different expertise that are kind of focusing in certain league types, salary cap contracts, IDP. This stuff's really interesting, really great. So I know I was I don't know if it's the reason he chose me, but I know I'm really into the salary cap contract leagues in particular. So like that aspect is like, okay, I'm in. I'll play IDP and I'll do all this other stuff if you give me contracts and stuff. So just in particular, what about that league? A, do you know why he asked you to join? And B, like what draws you the most to it?
Well, I actually, I don't know exactly why he invited me, but ultimately we had DM'd a few times. He's a really smart dude. He's got a lot of good fantasy takes, and I feel like he puts out those rankings things, and I know it gets everyone stirred up, but that's what rankings do, right? But he had just kind of DM'd me and asked me if I was interested in it, and I'm always looking at doing different formats. I feel like when I used to just do redraft, and then as you evolve, you get into Dynasty and things like that. And then it just kept evolving for me because I don't have a ton of love for redraft fantasy anymore, to be honest. I like the more complex stuff that I feel like redraft, you can fall into some championships, whereas these other leagues, it's a lot of strategy. And I like the strategy of fantasy football. So that's really what drew me to that league. I was looking to kind of expand my IDP leagues as well, and I had always talked about a salary cap one because I think it's fun. I went to school for sports management, and I always wanted to be a general manager, and I feel like that's a lot of people's pathways into fantasy sports. But I obviously didn't take that path for my real career, but I like to play and pretend that that's what I'm doing with my fantasy teams. And the salary cap league is kind of right in line with that. You have to have some foresight and kind of look ahead to the future. But yeah, it's a really good time. I enjoy that league. I feel like I'm not going to be very good this year based on some of my contracts I dished out last year, but that's okay.
Yeah, I'm also in the boat with very little space, but at least I feel like my team can compete, so I don't need the space. But yeah, it'll be, one or two key injuries. I may not have the depth, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes in year two. And James Harris. So again, comments welcome at all from all formats. Again, Twitter, we can't receive the comments, read the comments. So encourage you to go to YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook. Going for two pages on all of them. Going for two live. Usually, look that up and you'll find it. James Harris on YouTube asking, just curious, did you guys pick an SFB 12 winner yet? Or you're just announcing the giveaway today. So I know if anything going for two related, there's not anything specifically for press coverage in terms of Scott Fishbowl winner. So I'm not giving anything away that this show isn't. I don't think the Dynasty Gambit is either, but I guess good opportunity to talk about the Going for Two Live Network has so many great shows. If Jeff's doing any giveaways, it'll be on the Wednesday night armchair show. So definitely encourage people to check that out at 9:30 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday night. Jeff and Ryan Searfoss, they both do a fantastic job every week, bringing so many great guests. So again, if he's doing any type of giveaway, it'll be on the Wednesday show most likely. But question here from Gladys, who is one of the hosts of the 2-point conversion. That'll be on next Monday, by the way, for anyone curious to stick around next Monday. But asking you, Christian, in particular, just diving into one particular format, a very complex format, but how many formats and what types do you play? I don't know if you can narrow down a number or if there's any type of format we haven't mentioned yet.
Yeah, so because we do the Devy Royale, I've been, diving into a lot of Devy leagues and various forms of that. My favorite is, so we're running, I don't know if I want to announce this because I don't know how many more we're going to do, but we're doing a Power 5 only campus to Canton league. So you have a college side, you have an NFL side, and we want to make it kind of accessible. Campus to Canton is a very intimidating thing when you start to look at it, when you have hundreds and hundreds of players to pick from. But we're doing one of those right now. That's my favorite league. But, all Campus to Canton formats where you have a college side and an NFL side. I love Devy leagues. I do play in IDP leagues. I have contract. I really am into a best ball Devy league that I think it was may have been Nick Pentikoff. He may have put that one together, but best ball Devy is a lot easier. And I know best ball is kind of the wave right now. I really haven't jumped onto the wave just yet because I fear that I will just have many, many best ball teams. So I try to stay away from that. But yeah, and I've stuck to mostly, fantasy football. Like I said, I'm pretty bad at fantasy baseball and the other sports. Fantasy basketball, I've thought about dabbling in, but not yet. So.
First off, thank you, Christian, for that, and James thanking us for clarifying. But also, thank you, James, for showing up and listening, interacting, and actually, I guess a bit of I guess we're going to keep the plugs going for the different Going for Two live shows because Gladys is mentioning that 2-point conversion will have a Scott Fish. She will have Scott Fish on the show in a few weeks, and there may be a giveaway. So, okay, well, yeah. So I think first off, definitely tune in that again. It'll be every alternating Monday. So I know going 2-point conversion next Monday, which will be June 6th. So definitely check that out. And every Monday, come back here or join the 2-point conversion. But just talking about Devy, we actually had one of your Devy Royale co-hosts, Jeff Bell, on and last Thursday on the Dynasty Gambit, and just kind of talked about what is the format, kind of how you can divide it, separate it, different ways to kind of execute it. Do you mainly do you combine the rookie Devy drafts? Do you separate them, and then you're adding the college campus to Canton? Sorry, that college dynamic or just straight up college fantasy football dynamics as well. But Felix Sharp from Campus to Canton was actually on the Armchair Show a few weeks ago. So if you go back into the Going for Two archives, Felix does a great job to explain the format again, talking strategy. So we've had a few format specific episodes across the platform. But again, speaking about Jeff and yourself, and we'll mention Kevin as well, the Devy Royale. So again, kind of born here on the Going for Two Live network last year. But was that your first foray into fantasy football content creation? And if not, where did you get your start doing that?
Yeah, so that was podcast number 2. So I don't know if you've seen the Cut Podcast Network. We have a few shows as well. But really the main show started, I guess 3 years ago now is what it would have been. And it kind of just was born out of, I moved a few states away, and we had discussed maybe doing a podcast in the future. And I kind of took that opportunity to, keep in touch with my friends and Sean Ward and Randy Hall. And we kind of we were winging it when we first started. We had an idea of what we wanted our show to be. And I think the first couple of years, that's exactly what it was. And then as with everything, it's kind of evolved. We added some new shows onto that network. And so we've had, I think, 5 different shows go through there. Some of them still going. If you know the Coach Approach with Coach Bruce and Brett Pape, that was part of our network as well. But that's kind of where I got my start, is on that podcast. And then, I kind of fell in love with content creation at that point. It was a hobby, and it's still a hobby, but I take it, at first it was just going to be a fun hobby that I just kind of did on the side when I had some time. But now it's kind of, what I do in my free time, which is good. And I love it. And shout out to Jeff and Kevin. The Devy Royale has had an extreme amount of support, and we can't thank everyone enough. If you've checked out the Devy Royale, we thank you. And, we did start with Going for Two Network, and it was a good time. And I don't know how long we were here, but it's evolved. We have a Patreon. We have a decent YouTube subscriber. And then we also just brought on Herms to be our audio producer. He does a lot of really good stuff with the audio feeds for us. And then also Anthony Carenti at Dynasty Drive on Twitter. He's doing some YouTube content for us. He's helping us with our guides, and it's just a lot, and it's fantastic. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think I've got to say it was probably at least 3 months, 4 months, and then you guys decided to branch out and do your own thing. And the way it's grown, first off, kudos to you guys, and it's great. Happy to see you guys have that type of success. And just listening to the podcast, it seems like you all, but it seems like Jeff and Kevin, especially say you, put a lot of work into those depth charts for the patrons, and you talk about how seriously you take it. It seems like you in particular spend a lot of time on it, as well as Jeff and Kevin. But it seems like you walk the walk as much as talk the talk there. So kudos to all that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'll take credit for like the designs and stuff, but Kevin and Jeff, I mean, I haven't found two people that work as hard as those two and care as much about their work. And that's nothing against everyone out there that's producing content. It's just Kevin's a different breed. Kevin will, we knocked out a 70-page rookie guide in 2 nights. It was absolutely crazy. Kevin was just typing away. It was awesome.
Well, he's a teacher. That's like he's probably done report cards that are way longer, way more complex than the draft guide.
Yep.
So,
Very true.
but I guess outside influence is kind of influencing a little bit of the work ethic or content in itself. But who were your biggest influences, both in fantasy football and content creation in general?
Yeah, so when we first started our podcast at the Cut, I think the mold was always the fantasy footballers, and people as old as Jeff Bell, they don't even really know who the fantasy footballers are because that was definitely. Sorry, Jeff, if you're watching, and that's kind of the running joke on the Devy Royale is that Jeff's the old one, but the fantasy footballers to me, like that was when I started to realize that podcasting was a thing. I wasn't super into podcasts, but I was looking for some fantasy football help because, like I said, I was kind of bad when I first started back in high school, and so I was looking for some help. I kind of latched onto them one of my first years in college, and the way they bring entertainment and really good analysis was something that we were always striving for. So I think we always tried to model our show off of that, and the entertainment factor is the hardest part. I think a lot of people can give a really good analysis, but even at times at the Cut, I felt like I wasn't entertained by Sean and Randy and myself. I felt like I was always boring on the show, and we were always looking at ways to kind of figure out how we could get to the next level. So that was definitely the model, the mold that we were trying to get into. In terms of writing, I just took what I learned in school, and that's kind of where I took my writing. I don't really have too many influential like writers that I looked up to when I first started doing that. Because I honestly didn't think that I would do that for fantasy football. There were times where I didn't even realize that was kind of a medium too. The space is so vast, and there's pieces of it that I'm sure I still don't know about, or there's a ton of great content creators doing something that I don't have interest in, like visually, like on YouTube. I'm sure there's a ton of accounts and stuff, but yeah, so the footballers are definitely the mold.
So I guess if anyone is looking to start out, what's one piece of advice that you would give to them?
So I couldn't narrow it down to one. So as you can tell, I talk too much, but the first one, be authentic. The phrase "fake it till you make it," it's really good in life, but in the fantasy football space, there are so many people creating content that they can kind of tell if you're faking it. And so I think, to me, just be authentic, be a good person, but be authentic, and people are going to appreciate that more. The second one then would be continue your education, whether that's a piece of fantasy that you want to get better at, or just football in general. I think in trying to be authentic, you want to be not the smartest person in the room, but you want to have some knowledge over what you're trying to give advice on, right? So those would be the first two. And then the third one, don't worry about follower counts. I see a lot of people when they first come into the space that are just really, really concerned about getting up to different milestones follower wise. But I'll tell you, I was there at one point. I was that type of person. But when you just kind of put your head down, start to produce content, the followers will come. They will follow the content. They will follow you for the content. So those would be the three.
And I would say, rather than talk too much, I would say you're very generous with your time and generous with your advice. You gave 3 pieces of advice there, so we'll go with that.
Sure. That sounds better.
But generous with your time. Fantasy football is quite consuming, and even though the football season's only 4 or 5 months of regular season, an extra month for playoffs, it does feel like it takes all year anyway. So, but do you have any hobbies outside of the fantasy football world universe? We'll say.
Yeah, like I said, content creation has kind of taken over. I love television and movies. my fiance and we go see movies all the time. I walk my dog every night, so I like, that time with my dog at the park. So I would call that kind of a hobby. I was learning how to play keyboard when we started the podcast the first time, and then I've since kind of dropped that, but I still have a keyboard. I want to learn how to play eventually. I was getting there too, and you lose it. It's not like riding a bike, so I'm gonna have to reteach myself. But there's those, and then I like to read, and not a whole lot though. I'm kind of a boring person outside of fantasy football, and I'm boring in fantasy football, like I just said. So,
I mean, I don't think you're boring, but
thanks, man.
I'm weird, so I wouldn't take my advice or my everything. But you hit on a lot of things we'll touch on later, so we'll call this whole section foreshadowing for a few of those topics.
Sure.
So if you're really that boring, I guess this next question might not have an answer, but is there one thing that the fantasy community doesn't know about you? I guess you already said your first word was ball, so get that ball rolling. Give us another one, maybe.
Yeah, so I actually have one for this. We talked about me playing basketball again. So I doubled up on MVPs my senior year of high school. So I got my high school basketball MVP and then my summer league baseball MVP. So I have 2 trophies sitting at home. I don't like to talk about that because, hometown hero, high school hero, whatever it is. But I couldn't think of anything, and that's kind of the one thing that I don't think anyone knows. Even Randy, who's like my best friend, and also we're going to be on a show in a couple hours. I don't think he knew that. So,
all right, the press coverage exclusive here. I love getting those edges.
Yeah.
But I guess just to further expand, what positions did you play in both those sports? I guess baseball, it's common offense, defense, but I suppose high school football is the same.
Yeah. So for basketball, I played.
Basketball.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. No, it's okay. So I played. So growing up, I played 4, so power forward, and then I never really got taller, and so my coach saw that I wasn't gonna get taller, and I ended up being the point guard my senior year. I just like to have the ball in my hand. I was a ball hog. Yeah, as you can see from the shot selection, if you go to my Twitter and find that shot, it was just like Jeff said, terrible shot selection.
Yeah, Paul George wouldn't have liked it.
Yeah, exactly. It was pretty bad. And then for baseball, I was a shortstop. I used to pitch. I threw my arm out my freshman year, and then I never got it back. So I just played shortstop, and my senior year, had to rotate over to first base. And then when we could have extra hitters, I had to do that because I couldn't throw anymore. But yeah, I played some third base growing up too, and I pitched. And then I played a little bit of outfield, but I told my coach I didn't want to do that anymore. So mostly shortstop.
So you made position switches at both sports and won MVPs.
Yeah. The fun fact with basketball is that I was a terrible shooter. Like absolutely. I shot knuckleballs all the time, and that's why they put me at post. And my friend actually taught me how to shoot. He's like, you need to learn how to like snap your wrist, like all beef basically, which is a common basketball thing. And we sat in my driveway, and he taught me how to shoot, and then I ended up, learning how to shoot a little bit. So it was pretty good.
Oh, we got Gerson in the house. He's saying, "Yo, Christian, going for 2 fam and my commissioner in my 32 team league." Yeah, I was gonna say Gerson always tells you about this league. Yeah, it's good. That's what he said. So that's your baby. Oh wow.
It is, yeah. So I've actually forgot to mention that one because we've got a lot of people in there, and I had to mute the notifications for a little while in the off season. It's a mute the notifications except for the important ones type of league because they're like, it's insane. So these guys trade all the time, and kudos to you guys for being so active. That's what makes the league fun. 32 teamers are a beast. I don't know if I'll ever commission one again. I'll play in one. I think it's a lot of fun, but man, it's a lot. It's a lot of good fun though.
That's almost more important, the number of teams than the format or whatever the settings are. But yeah, quite the beast.
Yeah.
If you could interview one person on your podcast, and it could be Devy Royale, it could be The Cut, it could be just a fictional interview podcast, who would you like to have that person be?
So I wrote down Nick Saban. I was thinking in the Devy Royale terms, especially in today's day and age with all the stuff that he's getting into fights with people about name, image, and likeness stuff. I think it'd be really fun to hear about his experiences. When I think about like all time people I would want to interview, it would mostly be older people that have a lot of really good stories to tell. I feel like Nick Saban has endless stories to tell with all of his success in college football. So
Well, Gerson's asking why you ran away from the NFL. Like Nick Saban, you couldn't have taken an NFL player, but I mean, again, Christian's talked about campus to Canton, Devy products. He loves college football. He loves watching college football on Saturdays, don't you?
Yep, absolutely. I love it all. I think where I've actually found this is something I don't tell many people either. Where I found the most passion is actually in prospect evaluation. So the NFL draft stuff that we do at the Cut is some of my favorite few months. We grade hundreds of prospects and stuff, and so that has made me love college football more, which has gotten me into Devy and campus to Canton leagues and stuff like that. So it's it's kind of how it's evolved. Not everyone evolves like that, but that's kind of where my path took me, I guess.
So next question before we really dive into the fantasy stuff, although we've talked a lot about it throughout, but that's okay. That comes with the territory, right? The channel, the guests, the host. But what is one revelation that you have now that you wish you would have had earlier in your life?
I went a little more sentimental with this one, but cherish your time. People, I still get wrapped up in all the busyness that is life, but you get one of these, so cherish it. I think a lot of people have kind of realized that over the last couple of years, but it's definitely something that's hit home more recently. So that's the one.
We're talking about fantasy football all the time. You can never take anything for granted. If you ever right 55, 60% of the time, you're probably a genius. So, we already kind of live under those and operate under those circumstances. So live under that as well, that you can't really anticipate truly anything. So,
yeah.
But we can talk about strategies, though. We can anticipate what the strategies might be and what might operate. But one strategy that seems to always pop a big debate, which is why we always talk about it here, is what are your thoughts on the term zero RB?
So I'm indifferent. So I think that there are multiple ways to win in fantasy football. I think that if you go any which strategy, if you go zero running back, if you go anchor running back, you still have to draft good players. And oftentimes that's out of your control. Oftentimes, maybe I drafted Jonathan Taylor and I got 6 good weeks out of him and then he gets hurt, God forbid. And I don't wish that on anyone, but it's a possibility. Then you've anchored with someone that's just not there and you can't find replacement levels for that. With zero running back, I think that you have a wider range of outcomes where you can be successful because you still have the ability to scour the waiver and things of that nature because you're only looking for a certain amount of production out of your running back slots. I'm definitely warming up to it. I was always a robust running back drafter. And then with the current landscape of things, I think redraft, we're going to have a lot of really good running backs this year. And then we're approaching the cliff for a ton of guys. And luckily, the 2023 draft class is going to kind of reinfuse the NFL with a lot of good running back talent, but we kind of have to wait and see. And on the Dynasty side, going zero running back is one of the scariest things right now because if you don't, going zero running back and then hoping that you're good or bad enough to get one of these 2023 guys might be a good strategy. But, it's like I said, I'm kind of indifferent on all different. If you win with zero running back and you want to do that every year, sure. I like to switch it up personally. Like I've had maybe 4 or 5 startups this year and I drafted zero running back in one of them and I felt okay about my team. I went robust running back and I just don't really like it. So it varies year to year, but I think it's definitely a viable strategy to winning.
It's about the execution, not the strategy. If you can, any strategy can work as long as you properly execute it. And even then, we can think a draft is good, and then, like you said, injuries happen or just poor player production, and that good looking team in September doesn't look so good in December.
Right. Yeah. And like, I mean, I think back, you kind of, you can go back and analyze each year and see, well, does zero running back work? Did robust running back work better? Does early tight end work? Like, you can go back and look at those things historically. And what I've found is that year to year, it changes. I mean, year to year, the difference in value between your high end RB1s and your high end wide receiver ones, it's pretty vast year to year. So yeah, it's do what you want to build your team. I don't love to push strategies on people because I do think that there are multiple ways to win.
Of course, yeah, it's the I guess part of the fun of fantasy, right? Is we navigate for our own teams however we choose to.
Yeah.
Which again can be quite vast depending on what your type of league you're in. And you already mentioned your preferred league format. Much as you play a ton, seems to be campus to Canton. Is it because there's two leagues at the same time and two is always better than one?
It could be. No, I enjoy a challenge. I think, like I said, I still like redraft. I'll probably pick up a redraft here or there this year. I kind of strayed away from it. I was in one or two last year, but I like different types of leagues. I kind of get bored fast, I think.
I think the variety is the beauty of it, and I talked about that even from a rookie draft perspective. When I got to a certain, really anything after the 101, you almost approached each draft. What's the format say? Like, what's the scoring settings? What does, should Kenny Pickett be a top 3 pick, or should he be, the 112? It might depend on quarterback scarcity, league size, the rest of the roster scarcity. That there's so many different variables on just where he would go, and then versus how which wide receivers you prefer based on the settings could change too. So part of the fun is the puzzle of figuring that out. And sometimes, especially in a year like this where maybe it wasn't as easy to get excited about the first round picks, maybe you kind of differentiated on how you were going to approach each first round a little differently based on the scoring settings.
Yeah, for sure. And then kind of going back, I still think my preferred would be Dynasty, in terms of something I'm the most comfortable with at this point. But I like to stray out of my comfort zone. I think that the guys at Campus to Canton, and then there are tons of people that have played Campus to Canton leagues longer than me, and I think that they could wipe the floor with me. But I look at that as the challenge, right? So that's what drives me to continue getting better at those formats, and that's just keep playing those. But Dynasty, you kind of get the same thing as long as you have your rookie drafts, But I do like the two things going at once. Especially you can win 2 championships in 1 year. Doesn't that sound great? Like that sounds
like 2 MVPs in 1 year, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, naturally inclination, because that's part of my I love the contracts in general, but the salary cap contract leagues or anything of that nature where you've got auction, usually like every year there's expiring contracts. So every year there's of course new players coming in, rookie draft, but you also have all these free agents. Unlike a dynasty league where all the main players are rostered, it's not the case in salary cap contract leagues. You end up with 2 drafts every year, so 2 is better than 1. Like I said, that's simple math, right? That's the numbers. Numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
Prefer the league format, but are there any scoring settings that you like? Or it doesn't even have to be scoring settings, but just league settings in general. Is there something that you kind of feel like you have to have in every league, or something that you absolutely want to avoid and don't want to see at all?
Superflex. I know 1 quarterback is still a preferred format, and in some leagues, but as someone who plays Dynasty and these other leagues, I do not like 1 quarterback leagues, because then I don't know how to value people because I don't play in them very much. So when I'm joining new leagues, I always ask, hey, is it Superflex? And if it is, I'll typically say yes, because I'm addicted. We know this. Most of us are. When we get asked to go in a league, we say yes. But and then also I like tiered PPR leagues. where you've got your half point PPR for running backs, full point for wide receivers, and then 1.5 for tight ends. I think knocking the running backs down to half point PPR kind of helps. I guess just not overinflate guys like Nyheim Hines or the James White of years past, like just guys that they're really not the best running backs in football. And so then I don't think they should be the best backs in fantasy football either. And I've kind of strayed from this. I used to be strictly just straight PPR all the way across, but this is kind of a new thing that I've realized over the last year or two that those are my favorite leagues.
All right. And it's funny, I will give you credit because as far as I see it, like Superflex, like that's a roster setting. So you would put it under the settings, but most people when they talk Superflex, they actually put it under the format, like league format section. And I don't, I always say like people can answer these questions however they want to answer, but I know my intention is always like when you talk Superflex to be this. So kudos to you for putting Superflex in the, again, correct section in my eyes. So extra point for Christian.
Nice. I'll take it.
Not going to necessarily rank the guest and say you're the guest 101, but I want to get your rankings on your all-time QB1, RB1, wide receiver 1, and tight end 1 in fantasy football.
Yeah, so I looked at this from like both a consistency aspect and also just kind of guys that I think have been dominant on some of my teams, which has been good. So all-time QB1, Aaron Rodgers. In doing some research for this, I forgot how incredible he was. He finished in the top like 8 or something for like 8 to 10 straight years, I feel like. And then he kind of had that, down couple of years, and then he's right back. I mean, he's back to where he was. I feel like you can say the same of Tom Brady, but Aaron Rodgers, I feel like, has been next level. He's finished QB1 quite a few times over the last few years. And, going back a little further, I'm sure that like Drew Brees came to mind. I know he had quite a few years. Russell Wilson too, but I think the last few years have kind of soured on him. And then obviously, if you want to just go singular season, Patrick Mahomes is probably going to be in this conversation just because of his 50 touchdown year or whatever it was. So yeah, I mean, I went with Aaron Rodgers ultimately, and then running back. I just went with LaDainian Tomlinson. I felt like he was a cheat code when he was playing, similar to what we know Christian McCaffrey can be in terms of he's going to catch the ball a lot. He's also going to run the ball a lot. That's pretty good for a running back. You like to see that. And I had him. I do think I had him on one of my first fantasy teams, so I fell in love with him. Antonio Brown was the wide receiver I chose. I feel like his dominance over the few years that he was dominant, which was I think 5 or 6 years, was just remarkable. He went back to back as wide receiver 1, and while that doesn't happen all the time, it's not the rarest thing in the world. But I feel like we talked about him in a different light, and there's a reason that people are still clinging to him in certain formats in certain dynasty leagues. And then tight end 1, I was tempted to go a different direction, but it's got to be Travis Kelsey. He's been the most dominant tight end I think that we've ever seen fantasy wise, and I don't think he's slowing down just yet. I think that he's got a couple more good years, and I think when all is said and done, this won't be super debatable from a fantasy perspective. So.
Even on Brown, like I think it might have even been 3 straight years as the wide receiver 1, and that's something that reserved for me, like him and Jerry Rice. So I think that feat was quite incredible.
Right? Yeah, I thought that was the case, and then I feel like the 2 years on the opposite side were in the top 5 as well. So
yeah, I remember. I think 2013 that was the Josh Gordon year, but I feel like Antonio Brown was right behind him, and then really broke out the next 3.
Yeah. Yeah,
I remember my first fantasy championship was 2014, and it was Antonio Brown as the wide receiver 1 is I think probably a 3rd round pick. So good value on Brown, I suppose. Then that was probably wasn't going to be a 3rd round pick until he got so bad. Well, until he was a Raider or a Bill or whatever team,
he was,
a Patriot.
Yeah, or a Buck, even though that was a little more successful, I guess. But
Milwaukee Buck? I don't know. I guess actually,
right.
I guess both teams won championships.
Right.
but yeah, so I guess all the foreshadowing, right, of the hobbies, and now we finally kind of got to that. It's the high five section, as I always call it. So top five categories, or five top five categories, I should say. So I'm going to start with top five artists or bands.
Okay, so I cheated here. So number one is Drake for me. I grew up on Drake. I will go to my grave defending Drake, no matter how many people don't like Drake when he is done making music. Number two is where I cheated. I went with Hans Zimmer. So a composer, not so much an artist or a band, but I think that I listen to more Hans Zimmer than really anyone else. I'm sure there are people that listen to more Hans Zimmer than I do, but I listen to him more often than any other artists on here. Then I put Lil Dicky. I'm a big Lil Dicky fan, hoping he releases an album here in the next 20 years, but he probably won't. Um, I put Mike Stud, so I listen to a lot of Mike Stud. He's not called Mike Stud anymore. His name's Mike with a period at the end, but I grew up on him as well. And then my last one is actually an EDM uh, guy. I think it's just one guy, but Midas is the name. So I I'll tell you, I just have a lot of different tastes in music, so I couldn't pick, and I just tried to get all the different genres, I guess.
Oh, awesome. Good balanced approach, I think.
Right? Yeah. That's how I build my fantasy teams too.
There you go. And you mentioned consistency earlier, so there's consistency through that. So again, practicing what you preach.
Yep, exactly.
And you mentioned you like to read, so top five books.
So I'm a big Harry Potter person. So Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows is probably on there. Now these are not at all in order because I can't pick. I struggle to pick. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. So the last one I remember when I was young, I was super into these books. I read them starting in first grade, and then I think I was in fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, somewhere around there. My grandma went to the 8 a.m. release of this book being sold, picked it up for me and brought it to me. So uh, it's always a good story to tie in. And then I read it nonstop for the next 3 days, and I finished it, I think, in 3 days. Uh, then Start With Why, a book by Simon Sinek. It's more of like a leadership approach, or kind of just um, like a self building. I don't know how to describe it, but essentially, start with your why. Why are you doing what you are doing? And that it builds off of that, and it can help you kind of through life, not just in your workplace or anything like that. I put Return of the King, a LeBron James book. Big LeBron James guy, obviously. I'm from Ohio. We'll talk about that, I think, before the end of this, so I don't want to expand too much. Uh, there's a book called Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. It's a sci-fi book. It's being made into a TV show for Apple TV Plus, and I am super, super excited because I think it was a really cool concept. And then The Outsider by Stephen King. I do like Stephen King books, but I couldn't pick one, so I picked this one because I also liked the show on, I believe, HBO Max. So those are the five.
Oh, I guess I read up on all the books that he likes to read if you don't know them.
A
So,
lot of different ones there too.
so you mentioned you like to watch TV shows and you like to watch movies. I put top 10 or top five movies here. But if you want to, we can cheat a little bit. If you want to do both and make a quick TV show list as well, feel free. But we'll start with top five movies.
So Interstellar is the one. It's the 101. I actually flipped this during the pandemic because I had watched Interstellar so much. I said, yeah, I can't. This is the one. But number two is Inception. I'm a big Christopher Nolan fan. You're gonna see that because number three is The Dark Knight. I don't know why it's not a Christopher Nolan list, but he has made three of my top five favorite movies of all
And
time.
all scored by Hans Zimmer.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. The Interstellar score is one of the craziest feats. He also did the Dune score, and I think that that's incredible. And he created instruments for it, but also what he did on Interstellar is just It's crazy. I can listen to that score over and over, and I have, and I do. Uh, so those are the top three, and then I put 21 Jump Street. I didn't realize how much I liked this movie until recently when I watched it, and I was rolling. I was dying like it was the first time I had watched it, and so that's the sign of a good comedy to me. And then I put Avengers Endgame because every time it's on TV, I can't resist the urge to put it on. So
All right. And then yeah, if you want to do TV shows, you feel free. If not, then we can move on. But
TV shows is hard. Because I like a lot of TV. I think so. Breaking Bad's up there. Ozark is on there. This Is Us is on there. Shout out Herms. We had some This Is Us discussions. Great television show. Um, I've watched so many good shows recently. We'll come back. I'll DM you, and then you can tweet it out or something from the Going for Two account. I don't think they'll let you do that, but those are the three.
I can always just tag them. Just tag the Going for Two account. Well, it's funny because just back to the books for a second. You said Return of the King. I was like, oh, okay, he's talking Tolkien, and he loves Lord of the Rings. No, talking LeBron James. But again,
Yep.
clearly sports, right? I mean, Going for Two, right? It's clearly a football, fantasy football, sports in general. So we'll return back to the sports.
Yeah. I guess I will explain that a little bit. So that was the book that came out when LeBron came back to Cleveland from Miami. There was another LeBron James book that I read over and over as a kid, and it was about how he interacted with his high school teammates, the fame that followed him, and I thought that was just such an interesting thing for a kid to be dealing with. And I was reading that as a kid, but the Return of the King book, all the inner workings of how that went down, very, very interesting. Very good.
Also, Matthew G giving the fire emojis. I'm not sure for exactly which list. Maybe it's all of them. They're all pretty awesome lists so far.
Well, I hope to resonate with someone. I struggled, by the way. Bo Burnham tweeted tonight for the first time in like 6 months. I should have probably fit that into the movies, but Inside by Bo Burnham, I was obsessed with that as well. It's really not a movie. I think it's just like a special, but I thought about getting that on the list. So just wanted to shout out Bo. Shout out Bo.
It's funny because I have a friend met while at university, and his favorite movie is I think his favorite composer is also Hans Zimmer's, but his favorite movie is Interstellar. So he's and I think a lot of the same reasons that you were mentioning. So it's funny that I've kind of heard this before, a bit of deja vu, but I know where it's from. So shout out to Danish there. But I guess we'll end with sports as I mentioned. So sports on for a long time. So you need to pace yourself. I mean, athletes obviously need to sustain themselves through, but even as watchers, we need to eat to fully focus on what we're watching and just sit on the couch all day. But what are your top 5 game day foods?
All right, this is gonna be the thing that gets me canceled. So wings is number one. I just think wings and sports go together very well. I used to go to Buffalo Wild Wings to watch games because in college we just didn't have the ability to watch multiple games. But we did have a B Dubs right down the road, so that was kind of cool because I went to school in downtown Cleveland. Number 2 is burgers, and I know that people don't like associate like burgers or even hot dogs with game days, but I do. I love burgers. Burgers are probably my favorite food, so I just want to eat my favorite foods on when I'm doing my favorite things, which is watching sports. Uh, the next one, Stromboli, not pizza. I don't really eat pizza. I don't really. I won't say I don't like pizza, but I grew up in a small town that had a lot of different pizza places, but one in particular that kind of ruined my experience with pizza moving forward. So I put Stromboli here because I do like a Stromboli. Then tortilla chips and some type of dip. That's kind of an essential on game days. And then I put just like a regular chip. I'm obsessed with. It's funny because it's also LeBron James, but they have these new cheddar and sour cream, but they're flaming hot ruffles. Oh, yeah, those are the ideal game day food right there.
Was it like a LeBron James signature flavor?
It sure is, yeah. And then Jason Tatum also has one. It's barbecue, flaming hot barbecue. Those are pretty good too. But the flaming hot cheddar and sour cream, I could eat the whole bag. Like I normally do. I sit them right next to when I'm like making content and stuff. I'll sit them right next to me and I'll just eat them nonstop. It's crazy.
I wonder if it's like a Canadian like Jamal Murray maybe or Andrew Wiggins if the Warriors do end up winning the final and he gets a trophy, it'll probably be him. But one of them's got to be ketchup chips, right? Because apparently you guys in the States don't have ketchup chips, so.
Ketchup chips never. I've heard of ketchup chips. Never had a ketchup chip though.
So yeah, so they need to again one of these Canadians again. If so, maybe I'm kind of cheering for the Warriors to win. Andrew Wiggins gets his title. Maybe he gets the Ruffles deal and he can bring ketchup chips to the States temporarily.
That'd be nice. We need new good things. That's for sure.
Okay, go Andrew Wiggins. Go Warriors. Sorry, my good friend Akili, who I know is a Celtics fan. I have a few friends who are Celtics fans, so sorry everyone. But it's I guess the NBA Finals starting soon. Hockey, there's a hockey game on right now. Game 7. Third round's going to start in just actually maybe tomorrow. So lots of sports moments happening. But Christian, what are your top 5 favorite sports moments?
So number 1 is the Cavs championship. I was actually downtown. I was in Cleveland when it happened. So I will forever remember how the entire bar that I was in, like everything hit the ceiling. It was absolutely absurd. And then we sprinted downtown. And by the time we got there were people already climbing up on lampposts. There were people hijacking a fire truck by the time we got there. Cleveland went crazy, rightfully so. We were all going crazy too. It was a really good time. Raj Davis's home run in Game 7 of the World Series that same exact year. It was when I felt like the Guardians, formerly Indians, the Guardians were gonna pull it out. Unfortunately, they didn't. But that feeling of elation was there. I enjoyed that. Browns playoff game 2 years ago, where they just absolutely destroyed the Pittsburgh Steelers, and without their head coach at the time, that was like I had adrenaline pumping the whole game, which it's a long game, so that was a little crazy. I put LeBron and Kyrie's dual 40-point game in the Eastern Conference Finals when they were that was in the finals against the Warriors when they were about to get, I think that was in an elimination game as well in that same year that the Cavs won the championship. It was
part of that 3-1 stretch. Yeah, I think it might have been Game 6. I remember that.
Yeah, that game was absolutely nuts. And that game was when I felt like they had a shot, because throughout the entire series I said, "Oh, they're toast." Like, of course they're toast. That's Cleveland, and that game right there was when I said, "Okay, they're gonna do it." And then I put Kobe Bryant's last game when he went off. Not the 81-point game, because that was young Kobe when he was still, not super likable during those times. But Kobe's last game when he went off and heard his like MVP chants again, yeah, that was special. I remember exactly where I was for all 5 of those things. So.
And it's funny how you go into your number one, like the block. You just say the block, and everyone knows exactly what that is. I remember at the Fantasy Football Expo in 2019, we were at the bar on I guess it would have been the Saturday night before. The game was on, and was talking with someone, and they noticed it, like, oh, the block happened yet, right? Like everyone just knows the block.
Yep. Yeah, which is cool because as a Cleveland fan, there's the something, the fumble, the drive, like there's a the something, and it's cool that the block is now tied to what I still believe that that's the most unlikely and also one of the greatest feats that it's all on LeBron, but like that any basketball team has ever had to overcome. Obviously it is 3-1, we know that, but for the weight of all of Cleveland too, and then the fact that they didn't get another one, that was the only one. If he doesn't block that shot, then who knows how long Cleveland's drought goes? Probably a lot longer. So it's nuts.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's crazy, but crazy sports world, so much craziness. But yeah, I think you help keep us all sane, Christian. Or at least you try to. I think you do a good job of it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think sports are crazy. I think they're also a fantastic, fantastic thing. And I've got the Guardians game on. I stopped watching sports for a couple years there, and then COVID happened, and I realized how much I like missed sports when there was nothing going on. And now, like, I'll put on random games. I'll put on hockey. I'm not a hockey fan. I'm sorry, but I'll even put on playoff hockey because it's intense and fun to watch. So.
You guys pick them on the sports book at times, so at least you're representing it.
Yeah, we do, but it's, I'm just taking stabs, I don't know too much. My dad was a Penguins fan growing up, and I just never got into it. So
I just found the most recent Devy Royale pretty funny, where it was like, okay, what sport is this? What sport is this?
yeah, we do that. And we also, we actually had to record the one for this week early, so you're gonna hear that again. I forgot. I was like, oh yeah, that happened as well. I read it and then I say, okay, Kevin, this is hockey. So should be fun.
He's always got to be prompted, but I guess just prompt the last bit of the episode. Just let you, Christian, plug whatever you want. I know the Twitter account for anyone watching the screen is there at C Williams NFL, but for anyone listening to the audio, you just got it there. But Christian, let us know anything else you want everyone to know about.
Yeah, so go follow The Cut at The Cut FFB. Go follow the Devy Royale at the Devy Royale. All of our content and stuff goes through there, and I retweet everything. So if you follow me at C Williams NFL, you'll probably see all of that stuff. Also follow Kevin and Jeff. They're working at Football Guys now, and I think that they're doing fantastic work. Kevin's writing some really great articles. Jeff is just on the back end doing a ton of stuff, and also writing, and they're getting rankings together, and they've got a lot of content coming as well. So make sure you follow them at For Whom J Bell Tolls and at DuBois_22. That one's Kevin. Obviously, the J Bell Tolls is Jeff Bell, but yeah, thank you again for having me on. I really enjoy doing this. This is I don't often get to tell stories that people don't know, so it's a really fun show, man.
Thank you. I'm glad people enjoy coming on here. That's kind of part of the whole fun of it all. We love. I mean, naturally, I think fantasy football people we love getting answers. We love being curious. So a little bit of questioning and some get to know you, and hopefully the people like what they got to know from you, Christian. I know I certainly do. So
I hope so. I hope they.
And if you like this program, and not quite shows like this on the Going for Two Live network, but definitely a lot of other fantasy football and other sports content throughout. Usually every day throughout the week, there'll be some type of different show or another. I believe tomorrow it's the fantasy cheat sheet. They usually alternate every Tuesdays with Speak on it, but I believe it's the cheat sheets week. Of course, every Wednesday is the Armchair Show. Jeff, he's the big boss. He's been doing this for a while, so give the Armchair Show every week. But definitely check that out on Wednesday at 9:30 Eastern every Wednesday. And as Gladys mentioned earlier, she'll have Scott Fish on the 2-point conversion. I'm not sure if that's next week episode, but next Monday, do check out the 2-point conversion with Gladys and Jay. And so everything Going for Two can be found on Twitter at going_for_2. You go to the website at goingfor2.com, goingfor2.com/store. You can get stuff like this hat I have, for instance, if you want to, represent the Going for Two gear. All that's available also at veridianglobal.com. So we have you can get the Going for Two collection there, but also tons of other great podcasts and their collection, their merchandise. So definitely check out Veridian Global, goingfor2.com. And I'm on Twitter at Senra Says. Press coverage, the next episode will be 2 weeks from now. So that'll be Monday, June 13th. My next appearance will be Thursday, June 9th on the Dynasty Gambit. Yeah, I said it right. It's not the Devy Gambit. That was last week. That was a special Devy Gambit episode. It's the Dynasty Gambit, though, every other week. So, again, thank you very much, Christian. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
And, of course, thank you, all the listeners and viewers. Again, this is Kyle Senra signing out for Press Coverage.